The first point I wanted to make is that Phil Halloran, who is in charge of the election integrity unit for the Michigan GOP, brought this report to our attention. This is a police report that was FOIAed after a citizen discovered that this case was being investigated years ago, and he FOIAed the police report, and he got the police report, and the police report's pretty heavily redacted. But the interesting thing is that the name of the person, and this is a single woman too. I want to make sure that we make that clear. Anne Maish, I'm not sure of the how you pronounce her name, but she's the city clerk in Muskegon, and she first received between 8,000 and 10,000 voter registration application forms from this individual, one woman. And that's when she alerted the Muskegon police. The Muskegon Police Department then must have alerted the Attorney General's office, Dana Nessel, our lawless Michigan Attorney General. She then asked the Michigan State Police to become involved in the investigation. And that's kind of where the report starts, because this is the Michigan State Police report. And as you can see, it's pretty heavily redacted. So what they did do, though, what's interesting is in a couple different places in the report, they accidentally, I'm not sure, they left out the name of the woman who dropped off the between 8,000 and 10,000 voter registration applications. And in the report, the Muskegon city clerk mentions that this woman brought an additional 2,500 voter applications, and I think it was the following day. And that's when the police started following her. Another interesting point is the police began tracking these individuals that they felt were involved in this ring of voter registration fraud in Michigan. And they were using the same technology, the GPS tracking that True the Vote used, that Democrats and the media mocked as being inaccurate and unreliable. So I think that's important to note, because throughout the report, they talk about the GPS tracking that they used. They started in Muskegon with the report. They were able to identify that an organization was working out of a California eyewear company building that had been vacated. So it was a vacant building. It was formerly a California eyewear building, and I think it still had the signage out front. So it was very discreet. They started the investigation in Muskegon. The investigation led them to multiple cities across the state of Michigan, including Flint, I think Grand Rapids, Ypsilanti, Southfield. Southfield is where they found the cache of weapons, including semi-automatic weapons and other guns in this facility, where they found bags of prepaid voting cards. They identify at least one burner phone in the report. They talk about all the iPads that were being used by the individuals that were hired. Now, GBI Strategies is unredacted in the report, which is interesting. They're unredacted twice. And the report that we have is, I think, 58 pages long. But throughout the report, they are redacted. So I'm not sure why they were left, for us to see in the report twice. So we were able to find GBI Strategies. And they also mentioned the owner of GBI Strategies in the report, Gary Bell. We were able to determine that I think he's in Tennessee. But what he was doing is he was using outside organizations to hire these workers who were canvassing and bringing in these registrations. I think what's really important to also note is that recently our lawless Attorney General, Dana Nessel, announced 8 felony charges against 16 electors in Michigan who she claims cast fake electoral votes, which is completely inaccurate. They cast an alternate set of electoral votes, and they did it because the investigations were not complete in Michigan, and there was so many ongoing investigations and lawsuits being filed that they weren't comfortable with the outcome of the election, and so therefore they cast the alternate set of electoral votes. So recently, Dana Nessel came out and made a statement and talked about in a fake press conference why she was pressing charges, 8 felony charges on these 16 individuals, 15 of which are senior citizens. And many of these charges carry up to 14 years in prison, each charge. But she announced the reason that these electors knew that there was no evidence of mass voter fraud in Michigan. So it's interesting that Dana Nessel's criminal investigators, were working on this report, and they were also working with our crooked Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, with her office to look at the registrations. So I think it's also important to note that once these registrations are accepted, these applications, these names and fake addresses or fake identifications stay in our voter rolls until somebody identifies them. So, they can be used again in future elections. So, and this is just one individual that turned in between 8,000 and 10,000 applications in one day. So you can only imagine the size and scope of this investigation with all these additional cities involved. And these are just the cities that they identify in this report. It could have been even more widespread than what we're seeing in this report. We don't know, because what happened was, and I think it was in I'm just going to look at the report. It looks like somewhere around May 28, 2021, they announced that the Michigan State Police announced that the case would remain open, even though the FBI had taken over the case, because they believed that there was a multi-state operation taking place with GBI Strategies and other outside organizations. So those are just to kind of, give a little bit of background on what we're seeing in the report here. We had a Republican-led Senate and House in Michigan, and the Republican Senate that investigated election fraud in Michigan released a report that I think everybody in the country knows about it, stating that there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud in the state of Michigan. They released that report at the same time that Jocelyn Benson's office and Dana Nessel's office were involved in this investigation of widespread voter fraud across the state of Michigan. And instead of saying, wait, hold up, no, we've got a major investigation here, they allowed that report to stand, and they actually praised them for their statement. These people are working with Democrats behind the scenes. It's all about the next lobby job for these people. It's not about our rights as voters or citizens in Michigan.